morning. Welcome everyone to Campaign's breakfast briefing on marketing strategies. I'm Nadeem Qureshi, the publishing director at Campaign Middle East. It's nice to see everyone again. We were supposed to meet in Saudi, but due to the visa restrictions there, we had to push the event to Dubai. So here we are. As usual, before we get on with today's event, I want to brief everyone real quickly on the latest news at Campaign Middle East and our partners. On your tables, you will find Campaign's first bilingual edition of the Saudi report we've published this month. This marks the magazine's first inclusion of Arabic content in our 16-year history. The Arabic section features strong voices from Saudi agencies and media ecosystem. While the supplement zooms in on Saudi Arabia, the April issue doesn't hold back on regional challenges. Still on making history, Campaign has officially launched its Arabic website. Our Arabic website launch demonstrates our commitment to the MENA region for an increased online presence and personalized content, ultimately driving local business growth and success stories. The Arabic content will be beneficial for a local audience as it's not only primarily the official language in many MENA countries, but also it helps us spotlight some amazing work done by local agencies and homegrown brands along with cultural insights. We now plan to reach a larger audience, thus giving a higher exposure and engagement to all our partners. The Arabic website is one of the expansion plans we have for Campaign brand in the Middle East, with many more initiatives to come. So stay tuned. Next, we are planning to host the 4th edition of Campaign Middle East Agency of the Year Awards on 11th December. As you are aware, our Agency of the Year Awards focuses on agency business success, year-on-year growth, financial achievements, agency culture, diversity, and the people and trends driving this forward. Here's a short video on the success we had last year. Some really amazing scenes there. We've just opened entries this week with 6 new categories this year, including Holding Company of the Year, In-House Agency of the Year for Brands, Branding Agency of the Year, CSR Initiative of the Year, and many more such categories. Entries can now be made at a discounted rate for the early bird deadline of August 7th. So submit your entries as soon as you can. More on our upcoming events. The Athar Festival 2025 is in full swing, with the call of content just ended just a few days back, We hope we got your submissions in time to speak at Athar. Athar 2025 is set to be the bigger, bolder, and more version this year with more than 3,000 attendees, 150 plus speakers, and more than 80 activations. With new zones like content creation, AI, production, and luxury marketing, among many others. The Athar Festival will take place on 21st and 22nd of October at the Jacques Bin Ali Foundation in Diriyah in Riyadh. The Athar Awards are also back this year with new categories such as Best Artificial Intelligence, FinTech Solutions, Luxury Lifestyle Campaigns, and new leadership awards such as Network and Independent Agency of the Year, PR Influencer, Creative Design Leader of the Year, and more. To explore all the categories and know more, simply visit atharfestival.com, and if you're looking for one-on-one support on your entries from the expert awards team, register for the next virtual entry clinic on June 4th. Deadline to enter Athar Awards is 31st July. Let's take a brief look at Athar's award ceremony last year. It's the biggest marketing festival in Saudi Arabia. Quick show of hands who attended Athar last year or wants to attend this year. Brilliant. Coming back to our campaign event, we would like to thank all the partners for supporting us at our event today. Our gold sponsors are Bloomberg Media, Platformance, and SRMG Media Solutions. You will hear more from them as the day progresses. Also, please make sure you contribute regularly to campaign. Keep sending those opinion and thought leadership topics to Anup and his entire team here, along with your latest work, your news, and appointments. Also, please scan the QR code on the agenda paper in front of you to send us your feedback on the sessions you hear today so we can work with our partners for better content. Also, if you're heading to Cannes Lions in the next 2 weeks, please let me and Anup know so that we can also connect with you there as well. That's it from me. I will now hand over the stage to campaigns editor Anup Oman, who will take today's event forward. Thank you everyone for attending and have a nice day ahead. And that's it from me. Here's a short video on campaign.
Welcome to Campaign Middle East, the region's leading title on marketing, advertising, media, and the creative industries. Backed by Motivate Media Group and in partnership with Haymarket UK, we've spent 16 years in the region setting the tone, breaking stories, and shaping conversations for the industry by the industry. From print to digital, podcast to social, we cover it all. More than 330 magazine issues, 1 million annual web visitors, 105,000 social followers, and counting. We bring the industry together: Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Qatar, Oman, and the Middle East. Our events and podcasts keep you connected to the latest and greatest the industry has to offer. Campaign breakfast briefings, Campaign Market Minds Roundtable, On the Record.
Hello and thank you for joining us on the latest episode of On the Record with Campaign Middle East.
Insightful panels, groundbreaking conversations, you stay ahead of the curve with Campaign. We keep you in the loop with newsletters sent directly to your inbox twice a week. We map the movers, the shakers, the game changers. We cover every corner of the industry. We wrap up the year awarding the best agencies of the region with the highly anticipated Campaign Agency of the Year Middle East Award. The industry is evolving, so are we. Stay connected, stay ahead, stay tuned to Campaign Middle East.
A very good morning to all of you, our extended Campaign Middle East family. On behalf of this incredible publication and representing a truly talented team, it's an honor and privilege to welcome each and every one of you, our speakers, moderators, partners, and delegates to this campaign breakfast briefing focusing on marketing strategies. This is not part of my approved script. And Nadeem, please don't hate me for this later, but I want to take a moment to recognize my incredible team. Quite often, Nadeem and I are the faces, so to speak, of Campaign Middle East, and we lead from the front. But a lot of what we achieve is thanks to our team. You've just seen 1 million site visitors annually, 20% growth on social through the year. We've just about crossed 70,000 followers on LinkedIn. This is our 6th event, full to the brim on the trot. So please join me in putting your hands together for our team, starting with our senior reporter, Ishwari Khatu. Where is she? She's somewhere at the back. Ish? Yeah. As well as our reporters, Chantal Nagarajan and Hiba Faisal. Our sales manager, Tarun Gangwani, at the back. And our senior designer, Remy Tokcham, who's not here today, but she's got an adorable baby that she's just given birth to a few months back. She's designed those beautiful magazines that you see on your table. This is our 3rd event of 2025. And between our 2nd event and this one, I've had the pleasure of attending and hosting several roundtables with marketers, have met many of you over a coffee, at the gym, or after our weekly basketball and badminton games. At the outset, what's the consensus from these conversations? Those who dare to experiment with new tools, test, learn, and scale are already miles ahead of those supposed experts who are banking on what worked in the past. Today, we find ourselves at a pivotal juncture. The brand, marketing, and advertising landscape in the Middle East is literally shifting beneath our feet. We're either learning to iterate on the go or are being swept beneath the tide of technological advancements, as well as increasingly, if I might say so, entitled and highly demanding consumers, and an extremely competitive market, and if I can call a spade, where the margins are not even worth talking about. In such a market, what makes us distinctive? What sets us apart? It's our breadth of knowledge and comprehension. It's our ability to unlearn, relearn, and think critically. It's our ability to solve a problem uniquely, get the necessary buy-ins from our stakeholders, and tell a story creatively and convincingly. What do clients really want? From multiple conversations that I have with them, and without oversimplifying the brief, they want the best of both worlds. A data-driven approach to enhancing upper funnel brand equity, while simultaneously ensuring short-term measurable outcomes that reflect on the P&L. Yeah, it's great to have a beautiful website with strong CRO, SEO, catchy graphics, seamless UX on the front end, and an adept team testing and troubleshooting on the back end. But how much traffic is that website actually attracting and converting? Is information from the site being picked up by generative AI as a response to consumers who are querying ChatGPT, for example, or Perplexity? Is the website, as Sohail recently put it, AI engine optimized? In a world where so much of ad spend is wasted, where outdated digital models are skewing our reports with invalid traffic and media costs are rising, it's no surprise that clients are looking to build lasting relationships with trusted and transparent partners who can demonstrate measurable outcomes. Marketers are now leaning into integrated, omni-channel approaches that target key audiences at the right time, in the right place, on the right devices, in the right context, and above all, convinces them, or their shopping agents, to take action. But this requires more than just jack-of-all-trade marketers. This requires real strategists who know how to forecast, budget, set brand guidelines, negotiate milestones and KPIs, and juggle the media mix. It requires marketers who know how to optimize and when to pivot in real time based on insights from advanced analytics and precise measurement tools. Then again, there's that elephant in the room of generative AI, agentic AI, and shopping agents. While consumers on one hand are developing a dependency now on ChatGPT, Alexa Plus, Siri, and Google's Bard, or like the rest of the world just calls it Google, marketers are similarly leaning into Gemini, Prompt Genie, Rippler, Passado, VO2, and from what I heard just yesterday, Nan. What does this all mean? Voice, visual, and text search are changing. The consumer's path to purchase is changing. Text, audio, and video content creation is changing. The rules of segmentation, targeting, and personalization are changing. The way algorithms communicate with consumers and brands are changing. Pricing models around strategy and creativity are changing. The question is, are we changing? While we in this part of the world continue to grapple and come to terms with the advancements in video and audio production, psychographic profiling, behavioral pattern recognition, and real-time optimization, the rest of the world is hurtling towards a future of recursive self-improvement, a future of not just AI, but AGI, or artificial general intelligence. Basically, when AI will not only be able to self-teach and solve problems that it was trained for, but also what it was not trained for. What does this indicate? What is actually lacking in the Middle East brand marketing landscape? Most marketers and agency leaders that I've spoken to agree that it's an education piece. We need to desperately and rather quickly upskill ourselves and our teams. We need to get hands-on with the new tools or risk becoming like our grandparents or my parents who still type google.com when they open the Chrome browser before they search for something. We need to have very serious conversations around how to define success metrics and reward-based outcome strategies. How are we using the freedom offered by a fragmented media landscape optimally to give consumers what they actually want, an opportunity to be a part of the conversation? What's guiding our approach between single platform or pure digital plays or omni-channel strategies? How are we finding that balance between chasing the latest trends while remaining true to our brand values of sustainability? Do we truly understand the potential of AI on the full funnel? If time and engagement are the marketing battlegrounds of the present, then here's my prediction. The consumer-first approaches of trust and empathy will be the marketing battlegrounds of the future. Transactional relationships within the market absolutely will not cut it anymore. The industry requires meaningful partnerships with stakeholders across the supply chain, and brands need to resonate more deeply and meaningfully and personally with communities and individuals. We essentially, if I could take a gym example, need to add a protein shake to our daily diet, one that blends creativity, cultural sensitivities, credible outcomes, and compelling storytelling. Although this might sound very uncomfortable, we must embrace change, choose to educate ourselves, harness technology, and cultivate marketing strategies that are both meaningful and measurable. It's a challenging path, yes, but one that is rife with opportunity for those who are willing to lead the charge. Why are we here today? We are here to learn from each other, understanding how some of the top industry leaders make it work. We are here to listen to their open and honest conversations. And we are here to figure out top takeaways that we can actually go and implement in our daily lives. And on that note, welcome once again to this campaign breakfast briefing on marketing strategies. Thank you. Now, Without further ado, shall we dive straight into it? It's my pleasure to welcome to the stage our keynote speaker. We're going to have one keynote and 3 panels, so stay tuned. We're going to dive straight in. Our keynote speaker for the day, Wade Eagle, Chief Marketing Officer at Platformance.io, who will take us on a journey of what I'm told is outcomes graph, exploring the shift from mere media placement to business impact. As Wade walks onto the stage, here's a short video about Platformance.
In today's crowded digital world, success isn't about being always on, it's about being always relevant. With the always relevant model, we cut through wasted budgets, focusing on results that drive real business growth. Platformance is more than a platform. With exclusive, high-quality partnerships, we're your growth partner across MENA. Unlock the future of growth. Partner with Platformance.
Good morning, everyone. It's just having a bit of a technical issue just to start the morning. That's always great. Right. Perfect. I think I'm going to have to do this whole thing on the fly. I haven't got my notes coming through on this. Firstly, look, thank you to Campaign Middle East for putting on this event. It's great that we get to all come together, network. More importantly, we get to share and learn what we go through. So thank you, Campaign Middle East. So my name is Wade Eager. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Platformance. I've spent 26 years in this industry, and I've seen a lot happen in how we plan, how we act, how we deliver advertising and communications. I had the privilege of leading First WW Bank's marketing function, and before that, I was the head of fashion and luxury and multi-channel commerce at Meta. What I'm seeing here is, and what I want to talk to you today about is that what we're seeing is a change in not how we do marketing, but actually how we prove marketing outcomes, right? So we're going to hear the word AI happen a lot today. AI is something that I'm not going to talk about. You're going to hear it 100 times today, but I won't talk about it because AI is not the answer, right? AI is a cool digital lever that we will pull, and some people are going to use it for their strength. Depending on what side of the fence that you sit on, you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. So I'm not going to talk about AI. I'm really here just to talk about business strategy, right? And talk about marketing and getting back to the core principle of marketing. I'm a bit of a history buff, so I'm going to take you through the history of marketing as we do this, right? But marketing was about engaging with people, right? Getting them to take action, and then to find a way to deliver a business outcome. And that's the real key part here, delivering business value. So if we look through the history of where we're going to, I'm going to talk about it through the lens of graphs. It's something that TikTok coined a few years back. It started with the context graph. Where you advertised mattered, right? Think TV, think print, think radio. Products were not digital in these days. There was no digital commerce. Everything was physical. So Procter & Gamble, they created a term called the first moment of truth, win on the shelf, and then you win the sale. This is where it all took place, but context stayed quite adept to where it was, and now we needed to move on from that. Next came the knowledge graph, right? Google changed the rules of advertising. They changed the way that consumers behaved. People started looking and searching for products, right? And you had to be seen there. Otherwise, you weren't going to be top of mind when it came to people making that purchase decision. They coined the term the zero moment of truth before Procter & Gamble's, this piece around research. It was all about intent, right? This was all about people finding products. That was the knowledge graph. Next, we moved into the social graph. So the social graph here was the rise of Meta, Facebook, and Instagram. This here was the rise of scrolling, right? Actually, what happened, though, was this flipped on its head. Google was about people finding products. This was now about products finding people. So it flipped itself on its head. Discovery commerce became the new advertising narrative. Then we moved into the content graph, right? Authentic, creative became value, leaning in, leaning back. That became the narratives that we started to talk about. And it was all about driving engagement. The thing is, with all of these graphs, they were all great. They had really strong results, really strong measurement, but they really sort of fundamentally missed the main point, right? And this is where we believe the outcomes graph is now about. It's about driving business value. So what these platforms all did, and what we've all seen in this room, ad networks always show really strong data. They show the reach, they show the delivery. What typically seems to happen though is, and I don't know how many people in the room have, where you've shared a campaign report, you've taken it in, everyone in the room agrees with it, until you walk outside of that room and you then present to the rest of the people outside of marketing. And there's a fundamental flaw that keeps happening there. I don't believe in that number. That's not what we're seeing. That I don't agree. So that's the part that we want to hear to talk about. Ooh, having lots of technical problems this morning. So if we look at the evolution of marketing, right, it's not evolving, it's not changing, it's just correcting itself. Marketing is an art. That was the days of marketing. That's when I started back in 1999. There was nothing digital. It was all about driving fame. It was all about feeling good, and that no such word as ROI. Then became marketing as a science, right? That was the year of digital marketing, the last sort of 20 years that we've seen happen. Everything was that we could measure it. CPI, CPA, CPV, everything there, right? Every three-letter acronym that you can think of. Actually, what it was about us proving to everyone else that marketing worked, because we were all convinced that it worked anyway, but it was about us trying to convince everyone else that it worked. And to be fair, at that time, this discipline was needed, because beforehand, we didn't have any way of measurement, right? Now we're moving into outcome, and outcome is just it's a fundamental shift going back to how do we drive business value. And I'm going to talk about how we do that going forward. I think I've got to push it this way, right? So we're actually seeing this happen in the region, right? I'm going to give you 3 examples of how this is actually already happening. So at first, Abu Dhabi Bank, there was the total amount of customers coming from marketing was 24,000, right? The challenge that was given to us was we had to double the numbers without increasing the cost. So no extra budgets, no extra team members, but we had to work out and how we did this. So what we did was we focused on 3 things. And the 3 things that I want to talk about are, 1, we looked at what was the business objective, right? And not what the marketing objective was, but what did the business need to do? In this case, it was quite simple. 24,000 customers, double it. So new customer acquisition, that was easy. The second thing we had to do was look at how we measured it. And I think this is the key part that we looked at, right? What does success look like? We had to move beyond the marketing metrics, right? So we did not use, even though we used it to feed into, but if you think about ad platforms, Google Analytics, they stayed out. That's external data. You had to get all the way through into your internal data, your CRM, your CDP, your business intelligence tools, so that when you see a sale happening in an ad platform, you can actually see it in the P&L and you can talk about it inside the P&L. The next part, which is probably the most important piece, was how do we take it away from being a marketing report into becoming the business report? And that's where fundamentally you have to work with each and every department cross-functionally in order to make this happen. So we had to make sure that we're able to say, every time we saw a sale, it's what everyone else saw. So like I said earlier on, there wasn't this back and forth where we show some numbers and then we just get scuppered in the meeting because finance don't agree with them or sales don't agree with them. So we had to look through how to do that. So we moved from 24,000 to 159,000 customers. It's a 600% increase by just changing a few things. I'm not trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I really do believe in digital. I do believe in how it works. What I'm just asking us to do is to reframe it and to think about where does it matter, right? And it matters in certain rooms that we look at all of these analytics, but actually what truly matters is what does it drive to business outcomes. We're actually seeing this as well across in e-commerce, a large marketplace that we work with, probably every one of you have also used creators in order, and they moved away from ROAS into driving profit per order, right? So they just shifted their mindset. That was their business outcome. They used creators to drive over $2 million worth of revenue in 1 quarter. That's right, creators to drive revenue, not engagement, not reach, just cold hard cash that could be measured. We also saw this in the telco industry. The telco industry were looking at driving installs. We just shifted them deeper inside of their funnel to activations, moved away from CPI and moved into PIE, another lovely three-letter acronym, post-install events. But being able to track that through, it wasn't about just getting to the event, like I say, it's about getting deeper inside of that, looking at where you can show it so that every time an activation happens inside of your ad network, inside of your MMP, you can actually see it happening inside your P&Ls, right, inside of the business intelligence. So again, the examples is always about getting it onto these executive dashboards, so every time a number shows up, finance sees the number, sales sees the number. The thing about all three of these is, even though they were all separate industries, what it was that the result was all the same. They all focused as deep as they could into business outcomes. We're seeing this happening in hotels when it comes to bookings. We're seeing it happening in automotive. We're seeing it happening in retail. So it's just a shift that I ask all of us to start to look to is how do we get outside of ads managers? How do we get outside of GA? How do we get outside of this marketing world of data? And how do we take it through into business data, right? And how do we get to prove it in that sense? That's what we're here to do. We're actually seeing, and I just want to give 3 examples. So this is the technology piece for me, right? I'm actually seeing in three different channels, and I'll talk about each channel. Creators. Creators was the wild, wild west. It was this shiny disco ball. Marketers talk about it. Most people didn't like them. It was fake, and we came up with all these stories in and around it. In the last 18 months, though, I've seen a real maturity that's happening inside of the creator economy. Right? Creators are now driving business outcomes. They're being tasked with driving sales, and you're starting to see that coming all the way through. So the creator economy is really starting to step up, and it's really moved away from being all about reach and all about engagement, and it's about driving measurable outcomes. Retail media, it's the hot topic that's on everyone's lips at the moment, right? It's really, again, this is something that we're seeing different. One of the examples that I would give is if you take a look at inside of the walled gardens about trying to find parents with teenage children, right, or school-age children. It's actually quite a difficult piece. What retail media is doing is it's got additional signals, and if you work with certain partners, so you can take a Careem or the Uber retail media landscape and target people that take taxis or cars to schools on a regular basis. So it's a much deeper and richer signal, and it helps you to work out how to segment audiences off the back of it. The open web. The open web's making a huge renaissance, right? It's having a really strong comeback. We all hear CPMs and CPCs are rising inside of the walled gardens. So what does that mean? Here's actually an interesting point. 70% of time spent online is actually by us, is spent outside of the walled gardens. Actually spent on websites and spent on apps outside of the walled gardens. However, all of us in this room, 70% of our media spend is spent inside the walled gardens, right? So we're able to find the same high-value audiences. We're able to find and do segmentation, and in the case of retail media, do even better segmentation and find even deeper signals by using the open web. So you get much cheaper and much better outcomes coming off the back of it. So it's not just the channels they're really turning into this outcomes engine as well. So what we're seeing happening now is when I look at the people, right, the people that we're starting to come in and the marketeers that we're starting to work with, start with the outcome, not the brief, right? Move away from saying, I have $1 million this month, I'm going to do this campaign, what is the expected return off the back of it? Tell me what channels we work in. Start with the business outcome. I need 100 credit cards this month. Help me go out to achieve it. We work off a fixed outcome model, and I can talk about more of that in more detail. But they start with the outcome, not the brief. It's a key point. Measure what you own. This is the part that I really want to bring home, right? Internal data versus external data. We spend too much of our time, I have throughout my whole career, I've spent so much of my time measuring ads managers, business manager inside of Facebook, Google Analytics, and telling a really nice story, improving my value. Move away from that and bring it down into the internal data, right? The stuff that shows up on the P&L, the stuff that shows up in finance. You do need all of this other data, so it's not about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. What you have to find out is how to stitch it together, right? And that's the key. We took 8 months in order to get this right. So it's not a simple task, but it is one that is necessary if you want to start to hold your seat at the table. And then plan to work cross-functionally, right? So outcomes don't just sit in marketing. If you think about how websites, right? Let's just use websites as an example. When I first started, 1999, I think I built my first website. It was actually owned by IT, not by marketing, right? And it was a static website, and that was it. And I used to have to fight IT all the time because it was technology. We then moved in through to the 2010s. Marketing took control of it. But there was no outcomes that were actually on the website. It was just the most you could do was a lead form. Digital commerce then took over. So then digital commerce took over, and all of a sudden, marketing had become a sales channel. I work for Clark's Shoes. You always see me in Clark's Shoes. It was actually the #1 sales channel. It beat Oxford Street, which is the main high street in the UK. It beat the Oxford Street store, the website. The second biggest store was the outlet store, the website. So 2 websites were #1 and #2 in sales. So there was a lot of conflict that always used to take place. We now have to work quite cross-functionally. We have to become a lot more commercial in this sense. And that's what we're expected to do, right? We all have this performance pressure on us. We need more, we need more. Upper funnel, lower funnel. This is just an observation that I'm saying, right? The outcomes graph is already here. 2021, it was just like a niche idea. By 2023, we started to see it in dashboards and happening on inside of boardrooms. Now in 2025, we see about 1 in 3 marketeers that we still to work with are now starting to look at the outcome first. So they're sitting there asking, what is it that I need? What does the business need? And how do we drive from there, right? And rather than what is the brief that we need? So we're really starting to see the shift coming through. I just want to close by sitting there and saying, let's look at the traits of this new marketeer. It's not about, as I say, brand versus performance, right? It's looking at both. It's not saying get rid of the creative. No, it's saying let's ask for it to perform. It's not saying get rid of data. It's like use it to find the value, not the volume. So the traits that we look for now when we talk to marketeers, how do they use data, but they use it to talk in words, right? Too many people, we talk in numbers, we talk about percentages and all of that. Find the words that come off the back of this. There's a huge opportunity for us not to have to talk about AI, not to have to go through all this complexity, just by fixing some key fundamentals, right? Going back to the core principle of why we all are in this room as marketeers. Understand our customers, help them to take an action that drives the most important thing, business value. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for all your time.
Check. Yep. There we go. What a wonderful keynote. Thank you, Wade. That was quite insightful. Next up, we have our first panel of the day. I'm not going to take long. Let's dive straight into it. The next panel of the day is going to be on next-gen marketing, personalization, AI, and the blurring lines between B2B and B2C. This panel is brought to us by Bloomberg Media, so we here have now a short video about them.
DJ, play it again.
It's my pleasure to welcome to the stage an incredible set of panelists, including, we're going to start from the far left, far right. Amy Peters, Regional Head of Brand, Partnerships and Wholesale Marketing, MEA, HSBC. Let's give a round of applause to Amy, one of the veterans in the industry. Luain Noor, Vice President, Brand and Marketing Communications, Fairmont Hotels and Resorts. Sohail Nawaz, MBE, Head of Retail Media at Landmark Group. And of course, Virginie Ludmer, Director of Marketing and PR at Volkswagen Middle East. And our moderator for the day, of course, Emily Bentley, Head of Client Marketing, MEA at Bloomberg Media. Emily, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Emily Bentley, Head of Client Marketing at Bloomberg Media. Today, we're exploring, are we okay with the mics, guys? Are we good? So today we're exploring personalization, AI, and the blurring lines of B2B and B2C. So really excited to have you all. What an amazing group of panelists. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope that we can all listen and learn from each other. But let's get straight into it. Let's start with B2B and B2C. Are these terms outdated now? You know, these were created by the marketing industry to really think about how can we target different audiences, but they just feel a little bit outdated. It just seems like the lines have really blurred between both of these audiences. Amy, I'd love to come to you first. At HSBC, when you're building campaigns, are you still building two distinct campaigns for two distinct audiences, or are you building now with both audiences in mind?
Thanks for that. Can you hear me? Is this working? Yeah, great. I think it's a really interesting question, and I think, you know, first we have to sort of think about the layers and the approaches. So in my role, I look after brand and partnerships and wholesale. And so I think that the role of brand is to really start to stitch these two together. So we obviously, we have to market to the human first and foremost. If you think about our private banking audience, they're also CEOs. You know, those people are making decisions across the board in their daily lives. So we really have to start there and think about what those, you know, those humans associate with our brand. But as we get deeper into sort of proposition level marketing, obviously we then start to distinguish and drive, you know, much more sort of personalized campaigns, which is where the sort of distinction then becomes more apparent between the B2B and the B2C. But really, I think the critical piece is that, you know, thinking about the human first, you know, what are those brand associations that they need to feel about HSBC? What is that fundamental trust that I spoke about that, you know, is so core to what we do, that really penetrates across B2B and B2C?
And I'd love to hear from you as well, Luain, on this. You know, do you agree with what Amy said, or, you know, how does it, what do you think?
I think 100% for us in the hospitality industry, it's also kind of like similar. I take an example, we just recently at Fairmont launched a global brand campaign. We actually, I wouldn't say we created two separate campaigns for B2C or B2B, but we took into consideration the audiences from the very beginning. So the campaign was actually built based on insights that we got through workshops and focus groups that we did with our guests, with our owners, with our trade partners. We got input from them about like really what we should be talking about and what we really should stand out in terms of our brand. So in the preparation phase, we were kind of like involving them. Then in the creation, when we started to craft the storytelling, we started to actually take those insights from them and building on it to make sure that wherever we're gonna get to with our story, with our campaign, is gonna resonate with that audience. And then when we moved into the creation of building the assets, We also continue to kind of speak to them and do a sense check in terms of making sure the videos, the creative that we're going to create will be actually visible to sits on the different channels. Because for us in the industry, as much as we try to drive business through our direct channels, through your brand.com and your loyalty program, there is still a big portion of our business comes through our trade partners. You here in this room book your holidays, and by show, I don't want to have a show of hands, but I can tell you've used booking.com and other websites to book your holiday, so you don't always go on the brand.com. So you cannot create campaigns without working with your clients. And for us, what's interesting is also keeping in mind not only B2C and B2B, but we tend to always think about how do we actually create a funnel for B2B2C, because they become your advocates on promoting your brand and your campaign. So we do make sure that whenever we create any campaign, that we do take into consideration the two audiences and the channels as we go through the creation of the process. We don't create two separate campaigns, but we create a campaign that will resonate and will live and will reach those audiences.
Sorry, there's one other audience that I forgot to mention, which is actually employees. And I think that is the other critical part when we look at B2B and B2C, is actually, you know, at brand level, we need to be resonating with potential employees and our current employees to really build that strong employer brand with that relationship sort of at its heart. And I think that's one of the things that we've really sort of started to take into account this year, working really closely with HR to make sure that when we're doing our employer brand communications, when we're doing talent acquisition, that we're knitting that really closely to our B2B and B2C messaging, so that we're telling one story about who we are and who we want to be and how we want to show up in the market.
That's a really interesting point. I mean, Virginie, I saw you nodding when Loay was talking. I'd love to hear from your perspective at Volkswagen, you know, obviously more B2C, but, you know, are you still blending audiences between B2B and B2C, or have you got an example of where you've done this? I'm not sure. Yeah, I can't. Thank you.
Okay, that's really working.
All good. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. So similar, you know, I think, you know, yes, I was noting as well, because we're seeing the same thing. We used to separate them, look at them, you know, in parallel essentially. But at the end of the day, the brand promise is the same. The enhancing the customer experience is the same, right? So we work, you know, for us, it's the relationship when it comes to B2B with our dealership, right? That, you know, I'll take with that angle, where essentially we as a team need to really make sure that their success is also, you know, our success together. So again, right, what happened with, you know, blending the audiences is really equipping all our dealerships as well with our insight, take their insight and together create campaigns that are much more stronger in that sense, because this is how we win.
And how do you, you know, coming back to B2B, like how do you juggle, you know, so many different decision makers, business decision makers? How do you juggle the complexities of that, Amy?
I think, well, the juggle is real, right? So we all know that.
Yeah.
I think, you know, we have to take a layered approach and a very sort of outcomes-driven approach to Wade's point earlier. It is really about starting with the business targets, understanding the prioritization and the segmentation within the business, where they're going to see growth, what they're going after, and really planning from there. You know, we start with potentially ABM campaigns that are one-on-one against key accounts, driving into sort of wider personalization at scale for our sort of bigger target areas, into our sort of brand building specifically on you know, B2B topics, into then our sort of, I've gone backwards with that funnel, sorry. I've gone the wrong way, into sort of proper brand, if you like. But it is that, you know, starting with the outcomes, starting with the business targets, understanding where the business growth is really going to come from, and how actually, you know, most importantly, how you are differentiated in the market. You know, in banking, there are lots of banks for you to choose from as individuals. There are lots of banks that businesses choose from. And, you know, businesses are often, always, multi-banked. So what are the areas where we need to differentiate? What are the sort of key decision-making points where actually we have a better offering or a more unique offering to really target those CFOs, those CEOs, as they're making those critical decisions, whether it's M&A, or a sort of treasury or a working capital decision, and breaking that all down right at the start to understand, which elements are going to be the biggest drivers of revenue to the business really helps us to prioritize and have strong rationale when we're talking back to our stakeholders about why we want to do one thing over the other. Because it's, strategy is choices, right?
Definitely. I mean, but even when we think about B2C, when you're thinking of really large, purchases like cars, hotels, there are actually a lot of decision makers involved. When I think about my husband or my family choices, can either of you touch on that? Are you still seeing that there are multiple decision makers that we need to think about in B2C messaging?
Yeah, yes, I think the short answer is yes, but you also do have multiple type of consumers on a B2C. While the decision might tend to be a little bit more impulsive and quicker on a B2C, where there are multiple stakeholders maybe involved in a B2B perspective, the key here is to really understand the needs and the behaviors of your consumers. And what we tend to see is that in a B2C, there is the role of storytelling and emotional connection, and realizing and understanding that it's no longer about only personalization, but rather hyper-personalization, if you want. In the hospitality industry, the days are gone about recognizing the guest by the name when they arrive or knowing their needs. Today, technology enables them to do ultra-personalization in everything they do. And everywhere they do, from on-demand content into your own playlist and so on. So as a hotel industry, you need to go and evolve with that. But the storytelling, the emotional connection still plays an important part in a B2C. In a B2B, I think while that emotional storytelling is still needed, but what lies under is really the proof functionality and sort of like really credibility that's needed for brand needs to show that they are able to do that. So again, when we launched our brand campaign, we did not go only through an advertising campaign or platform. We realized since day one that the campaign was all about, at Fairmont, we make special happen, and we realized that special does not mean the same to everyone. It means differently to you, to me, to anyone in this room. But it needed to go beyond just a campaign tagline, and we created a series of experiences that actually you are able to come throughout our 92 hotels worldwide. You can choose an experiences that customize to what's special to you. Special could happen after dark, when you can have like a spa treatment outside the boundaries of the spa. Special could happen around the table, where we take a dinner and we create a dinner experience at the place of your choice, not necessarily in the boundaries of our restaurant. So these sort of like really proof points were proven to be more important in the decision making, particularly in a B2C, beyond just the advertising promise.
On our side, it's a longer journey, obviously, when it comes to it's more of an investment. Buying a car is one of the biggest investment that you'll do. So it's a longer journey, but similar to you, it's, there is two big sides that, we need to take into account. And this is also where, both worlds are also really merging, right, when it comes to B2C and B2B. So there's the strong emotional aspect, of course, that we always need, to continue that storytelling, making sure that you resonate with the brand, and this is really all touch points when it comes to that upper funnel that needs to be created, right? But then, once we continue, it becomes rational as well, and this is where personalization on top of, really making sure essentially that you create the experience that is easy, that you guide the purchase journey in a sense that you don't repeat the information. You find the information that you need at the right time, right? We used to say it's the right information to the right person at the right time, and this is, much more truer these days, and this is exactly right with AI what we need to do. This is exactly right in terms of being able to find this is the car for me, this is the specs that I need. And as you're coming back, because again, it's a longer journey on our side in our industry, because you know, shop around, look, compare, and see. You need to be able to create that journey based on data, with facts, and more of a rational approach. But again, it's all about that full journey that needs to be consistent, have that customer experience consistent across as you move from, you know, a search ad all the way down to the website experience when you build and price a car, all the way to booking a test drive and, you know, ultimately being in the showroom to do your first test drive and, you know, seal the deal at this point. This whole experience needs to be consistent, easy, and personalized. That's how we win in this industry.
So should we now be thinking about, you know, instead of B2B, B2C, should we be thinking about B2H, you know, human, B2AI? Sahil, would love to sort of bring you in on this. Consumers are turning up differently now. You know, when I was booking my holiday the other day, when I was looking for a dress for a wedding, the first thing I turned to was ChatGPT. Like, what's the most fashionable thing at the moment? Like, where can I find a dress? You know, how are you thinking about this? Just would love to get your perspective.
Yeah, I love this question. Actually, I forgot I was on the panel, and I was so encouraged.
So good.
Some great answers coming out. Okay, so from a retail perspective, what are we thinking about? So I'm going to use, there's a battle going on at the moment, right? So if you look at sort of the shopping agents that are out there, and big tech battling to be crowned shopping agent of the consumer, right? So if you look at the operators that are out there, you've got sort of Amazon, Alexa a new brain, so Alexa Plus, so you can all complete that journey from product discovery to purchase to delivery, right? So what we're thinking about at the moment is how is that going to affect or sort of, if you're optimizing for agents to find, how do you connect your product feeds to the agent that might be coming in on behalf of your consumer, right? So we're thinking about that. We're also thinking, I think from sort of Landmark's perspective, we've got 24 brands out there, right? So when we come back to the personalization point, how do you personalize across 24 brands? You know, there was a story that got told. I think we sent one client at one point around 7,000 different messages in 1 year because it wasn't all joined up, right? So part of the work that I've been working on at Landmark is bringing in a CDP, centralizing all data, having that sort of single view of your users, your shoppers, and then being able to personalize. And I think where that gets heightened with AI, you know, again, from a marketing perspective, we've really sort of come along where we started with sort of predictive AI, right? So when was the best time to send a marketing email? And then we've sort of moved into the generative AI space, which is really around automated content based on, you know, transactional history and all that stuff. But now we're getting to a point where, you know, your agents will be prompting you to say, hey, how you doing, Emily? It's your birthday today. Where are you going? You know, what's the plans? And then we've got some suggestions on your clothes and where you might want to go, and we can book all that for you, and we can have all the, you know, a new outfit for you. Have a look at these outfits, choose one, and we'll have it delivered before you go out. So I think that's where we go with personalization. That's real. That's happening today.
My Google Maps knew I was coming here this morning. It's you know, so crazy how it's changed. I mean, personalization is expected now. You know, what kind of AI, I know we were talking the other day, and I would love you to share with the group, what are the AI tools, just a couple of them that you're using, that you're finding really useful, how your teams are using them. Would love to kind of, you know, share that with the group.
Yeah, so what we've been doing and what I've been encouraging the team to do, and we're on a very sort of AI replace your jobs, but you are going to be managing AI, right? So that's the sort of approach that we've been taking, especially certainly in retail media, because there's so many opportunities in retail media, right? So, and it comes back to, you know, campaign setup AI, it comes to programmatic agents, optimizing the bids. There's so many sort of agents. We've produced 12, and the type of tools we've been using, vibe coding, so you can go into Prompt Genie, create your prompt, take your prompt, stick it in LLM you're using, produce product strategy, then you can go into things like V0 or Replit, produce vibe code, the actual project, and then see an interface being built and then deployed to, you know, directly the open internet. So they're the kind of sort of tools and processes we've been following just to create some of these new that are coming out.
Stephen Bartlett talks a lot about Replit. One of my friends recently set up a business and created a whole website in about half an hour, and it actually looked pretty impressive. But are we losing, I was on LinkedIn the other day and I was, going through posts, and I could just tell that a lot of the posts were ChatGPT. I mean, don't even get me started on the M dash that, if you're not taking out the M dash, then everyone can read right through that. But I'm not shaming anyone for using ChatGPT. I definitely think we should be using it. We should be leaning in. But where is, the lines between being authentic? How do we make sure as a brand, anyone, feel free to anyone to answer this, but how are we making sure that our messaging is definitely, authentic and personalized, and, the consumer really engages with it?
I mean, I loved what Wade presented earlier about us going to the basics and understand how things are evolving, and that slide that shows how we moved from the traditional media to the Google and all of that. I think we need to embrace where we are going right now, but we also need to understand how to utilize it as a tool, not as an asset, rather than something that would replace. As such. And Suhail and I were chatting this morning as well during the coffee. We were talking about the fact that it's moving so fast, so quickly, that you need to really embrace it and be part of it. But I know talked in his introduction this morning about there is a need of education about how to utilize these tools and how to do it. And sometimes if it falls into a place where you just use it to really save costs because you don't want to, or save time, or do something, and you don't embrace it as a tool, then you actually fall in that. I mean, I think you need to invest time and thrive to educate AI to also on your tone of voice in your sort of thing. You talked earlier about how you searching for a wedding dress or for your holiday. We see that in our industry. People today don't go to the point earlier of Wade about to Google to find a best hotel in Dubai, but they turn into ChatGPT to say, I want a best spot on the beach with the best view to celebrate my anniversary. And you won't be surprised if someone email you or send you with even a sort of an AI generated picture and say, can you replicate this for me? So what are we doing as marketeers and from our different industries to embrace the tool, but also to invest in educating this tool on our brands? I think that's the question.
But also that comes back to brand fundamentals, right? If you are not really, really clear internally on your tone of voice, internally on who you need to be as a brand, people should feel confident in expressing themselves authentically on LinkedIn. And that, I think, is a really big challenge for us internally, that people don't feel confident enough and therefore do feel the need to sort of rely on ChatGPT and generate this nonsense half the time that, it doesn't sound like them, it doesn't do them any good.
Perfect.
But it doesn't do them any good, right? Because they're not really building their own brand. They're, building a brand that maybe they sort of aspire to, or they think they need to feel cleverer than they are. There's some really basic fundamentals that you need to just sort of lean back into. And I think, you touched on it, this is a channel. We have to we need to educate. We need to think about how to influence. It's, I feel like such a dinosaur, but there's really old school tactics, PR, newspaper, these LLMs are absorbing third-party content to ratify what we're telling them. It isn't just about pumping out the same old stuff. We need to think about white papers. We need to think about the full mix. And then when you've actually got the full mix, then you can start to sort of drive to specific outcomes-driven and really personalized activations that will, really actually impact, because those people, your customer, sees the whole piece. And I think we need to be dinosaurs.
Just coming back to the earlier point as well around sort of the education piece, I think there needs to be a clearer direction from all businesses of what you want to be on AI. What I've been saying is that, there's been a transition from what I like to call the secret cyborg, right? So those people in businesses that are using AI, but nobody knows they're using AI, and they're not telling anybody using AI. So it's a secret cyborg scenario. Then I think there's three elements to it, right? In terms of the business leadership needs to have a clear policy on what you want to do as a business around AI, and there's got to be some governance in there as well. And I think the second element, there needs to be a lab set up within an environment, because those secret cyborgs, they are the perfect people to put into a lab, right, to test stuff. And it's okay to test stuff, and it doesn't work, it's fine. Might not work now, but it might work again when the next model gets released, right? And then the other sort of key element is the crowd. So how are you then going to get the rest of the employees? Because it's around change management as well as education, right? Because again, your basics of marketing have got to be the fundamentals that you build. But AI is really there to give you 10x. It shouldn't be writing your strategy. You've got your strategy. And how do you use that within a company sort of guidance and direction, and using 10x within your...
On my side, AI, it's, I think, completely changing the scale in how we do marketing. I don't believe that this will replace any of us. I don't think this is how we should think. It's all about really how we become, at the end of the day, better marketer. How do we really leverage all the tools and really make it in a sense that, it's working for us and not the other way around. So I agree, getting that authenticity, that human touch as a brand, maybe this is where, as human now, we need to kind of like continue to push and then keep questioning. I think this is what it is, right? Like we receive, and like you said, you get the prompt and then you get the content and you don't really question it. And I think this is where there's a bit of a risk, I would say, because there's no more questioning, and that's what it is. But on my end, what I see in my industry particularly, and educating people, but also training the team, training everyone on how do we use it again in a sense of becoming a better marketer is data, insight. At the end of the day, we are bombarded with insight. We used to be that we need to have a lot of data, but it is hard. At the end of the day, we are human, and that's exactly where AI, to me, is absolutely fantastic, because you're able to consume an amount of data and get all these insights that would have been impossible before. You get a deck of like 100 pages slides. Yeah, you're not going to go through it and understand. Now, within minutes, you can, and you can take educated decisions. So there's no more manual intuitions in that sense. You know exactly what you should be doing, because this is where that tool really will support us. So from my perspective, when it comes to marketing, this is where I think it's getting extremely exciting, because and in a world where every single dollar is very much scrutinized, and we need to deliver on return on investment, that is a fantastic tool for us to be able to really prove why marketing is working, right?
Definitely. I think having that encouragement from leadership to really use the tools, don't be afraid of them, really think about how we can use them more and just be curious with it, I think is definitely the way to go. Just want to think about a kind of a lightning round, if you like. So, this industry really is trying to keep up with the pace of change. It is really rapid. So if we had a 16-year-old coming on the stage wanting to go into marketing, what would be, your advice? What would the skills be for this 16-year-old really wanting a great career in marketing today? What should they focus on? I can't even do my timetables anymore. I don't need to. I've got a calculator. Like, thinking about that, like, what should they be focused on when you think about AI and the way it's going?
Okay. Curiosity about humans. I mean, the absolute basic, the curiosity about why people do the things that they do is always going to underpin everything. I think, the ability to challenge as well is always critical. It's always been really, really, those are the sort of things that I look for when I'm hiring. Can you say, hey, Amy, I don't agree with you, and this is why? That, to me, if somebody has the skill to say, you haven't looked hard enough, you haven't looked far enough, you haven't looked at this, even if they're wrong, I don't care. I want to have that constructive, discussion with every single person in my team. I want people with different viewpoints, but underpinning all of that, you can't do constructive challenge if you're not curious, if you're not thinking about humans. You have to be driven, to me, by that sort of fundamental piece. And to me, that's not going to change within marketing, no matter what tools we use.
It's all about audience. When you think about personalization, you think about AI, you think about B2B, B2C.
It's just about people.
It is, yeah. Thank you.
I mean, from my side, it's embrace what we mentioned earlier, that AI and tech are tools, they're not replacement. Educate yourself on how you want to use them, and thrive to really educate these tools on your brand and your tone. There's the old principle of garbage in, garbage out when it comes to data. AI is not going to resolve that for you necessarily. It's like you are the one, and I always joke with this with my team when I say there's a reason it's called artificial intelligence. It's not genuine intelligence.
Yeah.
So don't really give up to the fact that will supersede your own intelligence. It's a tool that's going to help you to make things better, and it's going to bounce, create that conversation with you. But you also should always believe in your ability to best utilize that tool, rather than become a follower of that tool. So again, things keeps evolving in the way we do marketing, and going back to the timeline of where we started, where we are. But one thing for sure is that things are now a little bit rapidly going. You talked about the website development, we talked about the app, Me and Suhail development. That sometimes now with these tools, you might be able to do things yourself, but you also need to know where to put it in the right context and how to best use it. And there is no one size fits all, because different industries has different audiences, different behaviors, so you can use these tools in a different way. So don't just really take it for granted and use it as it is. You have to really understand how best you can utilize it in your own way.
Definitely, that's really helpful. Thank you.
I think a 16-year-old in AI, I think they're bored with these skills nowadays. I don't think you'd have to give them that. I think what I'd definitely say is
document as you go.
Document as you go. So whatever you're doing, document it. What's your process? What's your workflow? Because people say, so hey, I want to do this, and what do you think I should do? And it's okay. Well, what's your workflow? Well, what do you mean by that? I say, in that role.
So sorry, can you lift your microphone? Sorry.
Hello.
There we go.
Can you hear me? So in that role, what is your workflow? And so I have no idea. So I say, okay, well, if Bob is the only person that knows what Bob does, I think I have that microphone, by the way. I've been set up. Thank you. So just going back to if Bob is the only person that knows what Bob does, then and nobody else knows in the business except for Bob, then you're not ready for AI. You have to be able to document that process, right? That process is the key to automation. And I think as a one-liner to the 16-year-old, I'd say, look, you don't have to be an AI expert, but just be AI active.
That's great. Yeah, I completely agree with that.
For me, on my side, I was going with curiosity as well, because that's, I think, one tool that is, something extremely important that you need to nurture for authenticity moving forward. But if in a 16-year-old these days, I would say one of the very true skills that I would love to see is focus. I think in this very highly complex world, and marketing becoming more sophisticated than it was a couple of years ago, and we heard it today, right, with our keynote speaker, focus on the group, on the goal, on the target, right? So really that ability to stay true to what am I doing, what is it that is the main objective, and continuously leveraging all the tools that now are enabling you to become a better marketer is how you win, right? So I would say focus, because it's a highly complex, a lot of disruptions, a lot of ways, which I think is going to be very, very tricky in the next few years. So being able to stay true to that skill set will be very clear, especially for 16 years old.
I think that's a great one. I don't know if you've read the book, or any of you read the book Stolen Focus by Johan Hari. I mean, if you haven't read that, I would really recommend it. I think it's so important in this day and age. I don't know if the graduates coming in, it's so difficult for them to concentrate when there's so many notifications, and their expectations on replying to their friends is even greater than ever. So I think focus is such a good theme. Thinking about where it is you want to go, how you can be curious. Amy, did you want to say something?
No, I agree with that, but I also think that we have to adapt. Because I think that this is actually reality. And I think that I agree with you that focus is super important, but I also, to my earlier point, I don't really think we should all be dinosaurs. I think we do need to understand that as those channels, proliferate and fragment, that we need to learn from those 16-year-olds actually how that reality is manifesting and how they're making decisions across all of those. So there's a two-way street in that piece.
Panelists, thank you so much. Honestly, I think we've all learned, I've definitely learned something. I hope that you've all enjoyed this, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you.
I think we can leave.
Great panel. We've got one more panel. Good morning, everyone. Is everyone still awake? Let's shake that off. Wonderful. We've got one more panel and one fireside chat left. We're going to go right into it. The second panel of the day. See, this is how you hold your mic, I'm just saying. For anyone who's holding the mic, you don't have to scream into it, but just hold it really close for the second panel, yeah? And if you have any issues with your mics, I'll come right along. We move to the second panel of the day on fragmented media landscape, a boon or a bane for marketing in the Middle East. Before I continue, let me remind you that we have just one more fireside chat after this, which is also going to be great. We've got a bunch of great brands and agency leaders up on stage, plenty to learn. This panel, the second one, is brought to you by SRMG Media Solutions. So here's a short video about them before we call the panelists on stage. Wonderful. Now, it's my pleasure to welcome on stage Mithun Chakraborty, Head of Marketing at Babyshop, Andrew Ian, Head of Performance. Yeah, you can start walking up. Perfect. Andrew Ian, Head of Performance, Spark Foundry MENA, Nikola Georgievich, Head of Marketing at ASICS Arabia, Anshana Murli, the Associate Director of Growth and Best Practices at Hilton Middle East, and of course, our moderator for the day, Director of Digital Solutions at SRMG Media Solutions, Nader Bitar. Nader, over to you.
All right, good morning. I want to start off with a quote that attention, as Gary Vee once said, attention is the single most important asset. It's your attention, it's the audience attention. We all agree attention is fundamental, it's a breakthrough, it's important, but it's a battlefield. And the reason why I'm saying it's a battlefield is because we're living in an age where the average consumer shifts from screen to platform to app in a matter of seconds. Is it due to an influx of platforms on apps? Platforms are multiplying by the hour, algorithms are evolving more than strategies. And what does that have to do with marketeers? I don't know. They're stuck in between precision or evolution and confusion of tech. Maybe not. This is what we're going to explore today. And more importantly, have we emerged from traditional media, broad marketing, to precision media to target audiences? Are we lost in a sea of platforms, of technologies, of AI with the emergence? It's this buzzword that's confusing everybody. Do we use it? Do we not use it? And I feel bad for the 16-year-old that we're gonna bombard him with ideas, but we have to take a step back and assess what's important. And did you know that the human attention span has dropped to 8 seconds since the year 2000? That's less than that of a goldfish. So imagine what brands need to do in 8 seconds. Build a story, build a narrative, and associate their audience with that brand. So content creators in this room, publishers in this room, we have a lot of work to do in 8 seconds. So without further ado, I'm very happy to welcome the panelists. We're gonna talk about attention, and we're gonna talk about the fragmented media landscape. Is it a curse? Is it a blessing? We're here to find out. So I wanna start off with the attention, Nicola. Where is attention going? Where is the media spend evolving? When you want to plan a media campaign in particular, based on ASICS feedback, do you consider CTV? Do you consider social media? Do you consider podcasts as opposed to traditional media? The big question is, why do you use this platform? Is it because of your ROI-driven strategies, or is it because you want to jump into what's new?
Yeah, so first of all, we need to be where our consumer is. Yeah. And all of us, we have seen a shift in the way the consumers consume media and entertainment. And so I think that's the first major point that we need here to address. So a major shift has happened in that sense. And I like to compare it the same as when you have like black and white television and then you have Technicolor in Wizard of Oz. So in one way you have the traditional television, and then in the other way you have the emergence of the mobile phone and mobile platforms. And the consumer doesn't want anymore to be like a passive consumer of the media. They want to be on the go. They want to consume media whenever they are suited to, and when it's best suited to them. So I think brands need to evolve with that as well. I liked your point when you mentioned like the attention span is 8 seconds. I wouldn't say we as a brands or as a marketeers or content creators need to tell our story in 8 seconds, but we have a window of 8 seconds to grab the attention. 100%. Exactly. And then you have a story to tell when you have their attention. Absolutely. So in this sense, once again, yes, I mean, I don't know who today can use the omni-channel, you know, like shoot from all their guns. I think in today's landscape and in today's world, we need to pick and choose our battles, and we need to pick the best mediums to communicate where our consumer is.
What do you think is driving that change or that transition, in your opinion?
The consumers are driving it. The consumers are driving it because how many people, you know, or people in this room, you have that, you know, they finish their daily work or whatever practice and they go home and turn on the TV.
100%.
That, you know, that's massively shifting. So the consumers are on their phones, and we need to be there as well. We need to be in the landscape, and also the creators and the media industries need to be there as well.
100%. And from that, I want to drive into a strategy versus the scattered spend. I mean, a 50-year-old brand, Mitten, that has been accompanying us for years at Babyshop, for 50 years across 15 countries. How do you see as a marketeer, you want to focus on the small touch points and double down on fewer channels instead of just, you know, go mass and for you to deliver impact, in your opinion?
Yeah, sure. Firstly, good morning, everybody, and Campaign Middle East, thanks for having us here. To your question, Nader, I think, look, we all know how fragmented the media channels are today, right? It's not a straightforward one for us. It's a heck of a job for all of us as marketeers. But I think first thing first, I think it's also important to recognize when you have so many channels, do you really want to double down on all of them? I'm guessing no, right? I think all of us really play by the rule of let's just do marketing by intention. Right? Let's just really pick and choose the ones that are relevant to us as a brand, and I think more importantly, as you know, somebody mentioned earlier, what's really relevant to the customer. And I think to be able to identify that, whether through data, insights, listening, etc., and really doubling down on those fewer ones, with the focus that somebody else also mentioned earlier today, is critical. So it's not a question of either or. Do I choose this versus this? No. I think all of us have different businesses, different consumers, different categories to handle. For us as an omni-channel retailer, you have to have a blend. I think that magical mix, as we call it sometimes, a mix of logic, magic, the art and the science is super critical. So I think goes back to always us as marketers really picking and choosing our battles and identifying the core fundamental of what are we trying to say, what's the problem that we're trying to resolve, and what's then the best channel to pick up.
And how do you want to build the brand equity on that sense?
Well,
it's a very broad question, but
it is.
from a strategic point of view, when you want to deliver impact.
Yeah, when I see this again through the lens of channels and the conversation we're having today, I think equity for us is a lot to do with also building salience, right? So it is sometimes not just about frequency, it is about the relevance of the message. So if you look at
personalization,
personalization, but beyond that, if you look at so many fragmented media channels around, where is that one single thread that's joining all of them? What's that brand story? Now, you may call it a brand idea, brand purpose, etc. But I think it's very important if you're trying to really chase equity within this fragmented space, it is very important for us to know what is our biggest story and is that being transferred across the touch points that our customers in. And I think some of us are extremely, tone deaf. Sorry to say this. I think, and this is where capability matters. This is where partnerships matters. This is where understanding the audience matters. And I think to be able to measure, I think Amy put that point earlier today, to be able to learn, to be able to measure that, and to move forward and take those decisions that do not disrupt neither your brand KPIs nor your marketing KPIs, I think is the sweetest spot.
Yeah, speaking of capabilities, I have to put in AI into this conversation as we are all putting that. And John, I want to ask you, when it comes to basically AI agent influencing decision making and discovery, how does that impact your day-to-day, and especially when we need to appeal to algorithms making those decisions? From a Kiad point of view, what would you have to say on that front?
I think it's a very timely question now, because the way we fundamentally think about targeting is shifting. Maybe if, as brands, as agencies, if we're sitting in a room and we're thinking, okay, let's try to identify 5 personas that match our brand. And if you think a Gen Z who uses AI, that's basically everyone. So if you're thinking of identifying all of your target audience as 5 people, you're already missing out. And this is where algorithms come into the picture, right? It can predict and reach people far better than what we can do and what we used to do. Maybe create a campaign, put a couple of signals in there, and then we started overlaying our first party data. But there's just not enough nowadays, because I think as humans, we're all evolving. If you ask one generation above to identify someone, they would maybe list out 5 characteristics. But because personalities, characteristics are becoming so fluid, we need the support of AI to be able to say, okay, reach anyone of any interest, but they actually resonate with the brand. They like the tone of messaging that we say, exactly like you said, in that 8 seconds, a brand can capture that audience. So there needs to be a unison, but we often see that because AI and algorithms have started doing the heavy lifting, and some of them can say, okay, I can take a back seat now, but that's not how it works. I think where the effort needs to go into is, I think Amy said, tone of voice. There's hyper-personalization. It's not enough to just reach a user and do a one-size-fits-all approach. So it's how we marry it together, and I think that element of using your creative, and really understanding and getting feedback from your brand on what message resonates with the user, and using your creative as your targeting is how you marry your algorithms and your audiences.
All right, and to what degree the involvement is on AI is on your basically your day-to-day when it comes to campaign structure, campaign optimization, or business strategies? How involved is it? Because we all say that AI is helping us with our day-to-day, but when I agree with your point that when it comes to the human involvement, there's this this iron versus human type of confirmation on that front?
Really, I think the line between, we used to say tools and AI tools, and that line is becoming really blurry because you use a tool for a creative and now a part of it has AI. You use a tool for bidding optimization and performance, and actually there's AI involvement. We use planning tools, but it uses such a vast amount of data to predict who's going to buy and which channels to invest in, to measure incrementality. So really it's definitely far more than 50%, I would say, and where human impact or input is needed is actually from a brand's perspective to really to think about the feedback, what messaging we need to say. That's where the creativity comes in. Again, it is at the end of the day artificial intelligence, right? It can automate processes, the way we reach users, but that creative strategic element still lies with us, and that's the core of why we are still needed.
Perfect. And I want to go back to the heart of marketing, which is the consumer. Andrew, in your opinion, where is the involvement of the consumer when it comes to planning, considering AI, considering the tech, considering the planning? How is this fragmented landscape impacting the involvement of the consumer when you want to plan, strategize, and develop? Of course, the straight answer is yes, they're involved. But how do you see this fragmentation involving with the consumer?
Yeah, I was really looking forward to just answering yes and pausing there.
Made it easy on you.
No, but...
no, so it's worked opposite.
So, can you do me one favor? Can you repeat the question one more time?
Sure. Well, I improvise on that one. So going back to the heart of marketing when it comes to the consumer, how do you see this fragmented landscape putting the consumer at the heart of your planning and execution of your story?
Yes.
And more important, when you want to align your customer values or consumer values, where is that? How human is your execution and planning when it comes to your strategies?
Perfect. So it kind of harkens back to what Lo was saying earlier from Fairmont. They're one of our clients at Publicis. We have another Marriott on a different. But essentially, it's a very similar kind of methodology or thinking when it comes to how you manage your consumer and your marketing in general. When we think about omni-channel, it's a word that's been overused for years. But most of the time, we think about multi-channel more so than omni-channel. So with omni-channel, it's more about what's the brand truth that you're trying to communicate to the consumer, and how do you make sure that you communicate that brand truth consistently across every touch point that the consumer engages with. And as Amy mentioned earlier, when it comes to strategy, you're thinking, the thinking is more about, you're making a choice on where you have the right to win. So when it comes to fragmentation and thinking about how consumers engage and where you should be planning and et cetera, I think the best approach, at least what we see at Publicis, is really working with our clients to understand where they have the right to win, where their kind of core audience is, where their consumers are, and then making sure that we're helping them craft a story that kind of touches on all of those points. I hope that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, no, you did actually, and I also want to go back to a generic question for all of you. Is when it comes to a fragmented media landscape, there's a lot of dependencies on technologies that is the easier channel to target my audience, be it pricing, be it scale, depending on that front. Where is the issue on this? Because I want to highlight a specific issue, because today we talk about the walled gardens, we talk about the social media platforms, but there's another market out there to target audiences in many different channels. Where, in your opinion, maybe Mitten, starting with you, how do you see the dependencies on the walled gardens and the technology platforms to address this targeting on audiences? Is it ease of usage? Is it scale? Is it pricing? Or is it probably a planner that is easier to navigate a tech? I'm not going to name the tech, but in your opinion.
Okay, so I'm going to break it down into two parts. I think first part is about, is it really helping us? I mean, immensely. Like, look at our business, Babyshop. I mean, we look at about 3 or 4 different life stages, segments that we create. The customer or the parent who's expecting, to the parent who's just new in their journey, to a parent who's been there, done that, a lot more experience. There are 3 different segments within our business. And I need tech there. I need tech not just for hyper-personalized messages, but just to be able to identify.
You need tech, you're saying.
I do need tech, and I think it's really helping us over the last many years. I think you asked us a question at the end, what's the issue? So I think the second part is really, I think all of us know this is all, measurement is a big issue, right? Having standardized measurement is a pain point that we all are struggling with for the last many years. And I hate to say this fact, but everybody's trying to play their narratives, right? Nobody is really coming to bell the cat and say that, you know what, I know this is the biggest pain point, leave aside the profits and leave aside all the numbers that we show you. Here's a golden triangle that you can sit on and, you know, everybody's going to have a visibility. So where is that authority? Where is that data platform who's able to help us? So I think for me, that's an issue, and I think that sometimes causes a roadblock in us trying to join the dots when it comes to platforms, tech providers, or even when you look at the full funnel sort of an approach.
Okay, thank you. Nicola, in your opinion?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think most of the time also our marketing efforts needs to be measured, and we need a clear KPIs, and we need a clear measurement of invested amounts and of the efforts actually that we've done. So I think technology and these platforms are necessary, and as he said, it really helped in the past 10 or 20 years to evolve the way we measure our results and we present.
Anjana?
I think, especially in the fragmented landscape, yes, that's part of the measurement, but it's also incrementality, right? Taking it a bit further, which also helps in dissecting what's really working and what's not. And for that, I think Wade said it, to start from the outcome. What's the outcome, and actually what channels are driving that incrementality, breaking it there, and that's where the challenge is. Firstly, is measurement. It's really difficult right now, but a lot of the platforms, partners we're working with are sharing incrementality studies, which is acting like a roadblock. So I'm hoping that in the future, you know, we can build on this and it acts as a path for us to navigate this fragmented space.
Super. Andrew?
So I think cross-channel, so measurement, as everyone has said, has alluded to, is essentially the biggest challenge. I think a lot of businesses, so if you look at social, for example, it's now the largest contributor of digital ad spend, but it is that way because there's so many different social platforms, especially when you're looking at this region, depending on the audience you're trying to reach. Snap might be better than TikTok and vice versa.
I didn't name anything. I didn't name any tech. You did, all right?
But so when you're planning from an agency perspective, or, you know, when you're looking at how to kind of properly allocate your client's budget based on their objective, because of that challenge of the walled gardens essentially having siloed data, so we're unable to 100%. See, for example, who you know, if you visit TikTok and then Snap and so on. So what we do and what a bunch of other tech companies are doing, like Smartly, for example, they introduced something called Brand Pulse. These are using qualitative data and deterministic data to try to estimate what that distribution of reach is across the different platforms. So this is one of the things that Publicis focus on.
So you would want to encourage data sharing and data consolidation, data trading?
Absolutely. I think we would all love that. We would all love a completely open data marketplace.
Yeah.
But as consumers find out more about data, they get scared and start shutting the doors. So this is, you know, obviously as a consumer, I think, you know, when you're a digital native, you kind of give up privacy.
100%.
You take for granted that everybody has your data. Like
absolutely.
There is no kind of secrets in that regard. But yeah, we obviously need to kind of pay attention to it.
So a fragmented media landscape, is it a curse or a blessing?
Honestly, I think it's a blessing. Especially, I mean, I'm at an agency. Without a fragmented media landscape, you may not need an agency. So, of course, it's an absolute blessing.
Great.
But also, you see a lot of ROI growth when you do
100%.
diversify budgets.
Nitin, a blessing or a curse?
Blessing any day, especially for omni-channel retailers like us. We work on different categories, tons of products, and different briefs all the time within the business. Definitely a blessing, because every brief requires a different treatment, different media channels to reach out to. I'm glad we have a good problem in hand.
100%. Nicola, curse or blessing?
I'm going to sound the same as the rest of. So definitely a blessing, I think, in a world where you need to target niches because now you have a lot of potential in niches as well, especially for specialist brands. So it's really important, and it's important that you do not use, I would say, the old way of just transmitting information and hoping someone there will catch it. In this media landscape, you have the ability to see the reactions on your campaigns as well, which is very important.
100%. And Jana, a curse or a blessing?
Curse, no, blessing. Because if it wasn't for a fragmented landscape, I think we would have all just be following a cookie cutter method, and AI would have actually taken
100%.
our jobs. It's brought out so much creativity in brands. I'm sure if you're a brand here or an agency or a partner, the output that's coming out because of fragmented landscape is so creative, with working with creators, the storytelling that's coming out, and you would have never imagined you could see some funny jokes from, let's say, Ryanair, or I'm naming a brand which is not here still, but it's really brought out so much creativity. So yes, it's
super. I mean, I think as a conclusion, fragmentation is there. Some of you will see it as a challenge, some of you will see it as an opportunity, but it's beyond just a challenge. It's an opportunity for us to rethink how we build attention, we rethink how we build brand equity, rethink how we build stories, and rethink how we connect consumers to brands. And thank you very much for the panelists. Thank you all for attending. See you next time.
And with that, we come to the final panel, fireside chat for the day. Thank you once again, Nader, and to all the panelists on the previous one as well. We've got a fun set of panelists. This is going to be a very real, organic discussion. Marcus, unfortunately, couldn't be with us today because he got sick. And for everyone who has got this latest strain of sickness that has lasted about a week, we feel for him. A couple of us in the room I know had dealt with it earlier this week. I dealt with it last week, and bless Marcus, who's recovering from it right now. We hope that he recovered time for the nice Eid weekend that is coming up. Calling on stage now, Eva Skurlich, Director Destination Marketing at Hilton. Put your hands together for her, please. And Remya Menon, Associate Director of Marketing at Bayut. Time to have some fun. Shall we begin? How are we feeling today?
Great. I feel like we should get more people on the stage because we're a small panel.
That's fine. I think we're sitting in the center. Mithun, you want to join us? No, I'm just kidding. How are you feeling, Ramya? It's probably not, but I'll switch with you.
So I was thinking, it's good. It's a cozy little panel, this one.
Check. And we're going. Okay, I'll start this conversation in a very real manner. One of the most, a marketer recently told me that if you're being very honest with ourselves, we are running through this cycle of going to work and coming back, and their focus is broken between what's happening at work and their kids and their hobbies and everything else that we do in our daily lives, right? On one side, as we heard multiple times today, clients seem to be extremely outcome driven. There's this conversation around ROI, ROAS, brand and business outcomes, upper funnel brand equity that we're focused on, go through the funnel of conversions to lower funnel conversions, P&L, effect, sales, volumes, all of that. On the other side, there's still this conversation that is building around on let's be different. Let's stand out in the market. Let's be distinctive. Let's be creative. Let's stand out. Let's be different, right? Somewhere in the middle of that conversation, it's almost as if what we should be focusing on, and if we're being very honest with ourselves, the consumers seem to have gotten lost in that process, right? There are KPI-driven conversations, there are creativity-driven conversations, but the consumers know, and they've made their statement very clear. They want to co-create with brands. They want to be involved more in the conversation. They want their feedback to be heard. And in that conversation, it's about finding that balance. So that kind of sets the tone for the conversation today. I'll start off with you, Ramya. If we can go through, is there any strategic frameworks that have been placed or should be placed to find this balance between the creative projects that we're doing, as well as the business goals that have been set, the business initiatives that have been set, and kind of tie that together so there's a more seamless conversations happening between the various internal stakeholders that we have, whether it's marketing, sales, product, finance?
Sure. So I think one of the key things here is marketing being aligned with the business goal, right? I think in a lot of situations, we are all working for very big organizations, so things can happen in silos. Product is doing their own thing, sales is doing their own thing, marketing is doing their own thing. It's all beautiful, but does it really come back to what the business wants? And I think it's so important for all of those stakeholders to be involved in the conversation early on, because retrospective, I think, decision making is not very useful. So one thing we've done internally is to move away from that slightly siloed approach and have everybody on the table so the goals are clearly set. Marketing goals need to align with business goals, and marketing also needs to have the courage to say to business, this is your goal, and how we get there is through this. Are we all aligned, right? I think it's so important to have that. And then, once the goals are set, to have regular feedback mechanisms. Are we on the right track? Are we achieving those goals? Are we delivering those results? It cannot be a conversation in the beginning of the year when we are defining our budgets and our strategy, and then we meet at the end of the year, and then, all these questions are asked. So it's an ongoing process, and it cannot happen overnight. So that's the strategy that one needs to, I firmly believe, build internally to have connectivity between your departments.
Eva, sounds a little too idealistic, or is it actually becoming a reality within the organization that we work with?
No, agree fully. I think, again, we need to go back to the basics and understand what the strategy is versus tactics and levers, right? So if we talk about things like creativity, ROI, they're not your strategy, right? Your strategy is not to have a great ROI. It's just something to be, don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating here for mindless money wasting, but it's not an objective in itself, right? It's something to be mindful of as you carry out your activities. Same with creativity, right? It's a vehicle, it's a tool that helps us ultimately achieve something else. What we do, and obviously Hilton is a vast organization, right? As you can imagine, we have 24 brands, almost 9,000 hotels. I don't think anyone knows the exact number. Changes daily, literally. Hundreds of destinations, right? And so to manage that complexity, there is a robust yet simple go-to-market strategy that starts with an outcome. What sort of behavior are we trying to drive for the business, right? Are we trying to get the same people to buy more stuff? Are we trying to get new people to buy with us? Are we trying to get the existing ones to spend more, or in a different way, right? So, and then each of those three pillars has target audiences, brands, creative constructs that align with it. So any campaign we launch, any activity that we launch needs to ultimately go back to one of those pillars and make sense within that framework.
Part of this conversation that we're having as well on cultural relevance or community building exercises, it goes back to what some of the panelists said earlier today was, if you're looking at outcome-based strategies, one of the problems are how are we measuring it? What are the success metrics that are being put in order to measure this? Now we have that for various, you have brand lift studies, you have ROI, you've got your P&L that reflects a lot of what you do, but how are we currently, or how should we, and I'll start again with you, Remy, on this, how should we have specific metrics, measurement tools in place to ensure that we are measuring cultural relevance and its impact on the work that we do, on the campaigns that we do? Is there a way that we can improve our understanding of the effectiveness of community building exercises rather than just having it as a lever?
If I had the answer to this, I think we would have solved marketing, right? I'll go back to what Mithun also said. I think the measurement piece is a conversation that we have all the time. I'll be honest, we have this on a weekly basis with our CEO, and we've been doing this for about 2 years. And I think measurement, and specifically in the context of cultural relevance, is difficult, right? But am I saying it's impossible? No. We have all of our usual levers, which is, like you said, the brand lift studies, your surveys, your feedback loops, and so on and so forth. But as a brand guardian, you have to build your own guardrails and use your internal data and what your audience is actually feeding back to you to maybe build those measurement methods, right? I'll give you an example for this. And we talked about B2C and B2B. And as a company, we have very clear differentiations between our B2C and B2B audiences. Our B2B audiences is our agency clients, and B2C is a property seeker, right? And for us, it's hyper important to be having different messaging for B2B and B2C. So I think we're one of those organizations, if we were to feed our B2C messaging to our B2B audiences, it really would not work. So cultural relevancy, again, in the context of who your audience is really important. So when we receive that feedback from our audience that, listen, this is not working for us, we need to be able to listen and realign strategy then. And we've had this happen in the past when we've launched campaigns. We've thought they're beautiful, exciting. And if we've received feedback that maybe this is not hitting the right tonality, maybe this is not hitting the right audience, it's important to take stock of that and immediately change or have a plan in place to respond to that. So measurement, I think, is trying to use every tool in your arsenal to build a compelling strategy that you're keeping an eye on all the touch points, you're using the data, but at the end of the day, the data is a lever. The decision making still has to come from you.
And does this mean that we have to then go back, pause a bit? Because the speed of tech advancement is far faster than the speed of tech adoption. And we're chasing these conversations around Gen AI and the tools and all the probable insights that we can, then draw, get your clean data and get data integrity and ensure that that data is trustworthy, and then draw insights from it, then build strategies from those insights. But if I'm reading you right, you're also saying that the levers that we currently have of social listening, of surveys, of brand lab studies, we're still not making the most of that. Is it a mixture of then listening to it, Eva, and building it from there? Or is it also, can we draw some more additional insights from the tools that are available to us so that we can then measure the impact of what we're doing, whether it's community building exercises or cultural relevance better?
Well, I think the whole cultural relevance piece starts by defining what that means for your brand and what you're trying to achieve, right? Because that then determines what it is that you're measuring, right? Do you need a brand lift study? Do you need to look at your engagement rates and so on? For us, we're a global company, global brand, and there's a lot of value that comes with that for our customers, right? Because they expect consistency and predictability and certain level of quality that comes with the brand. But then in each market, you need to decide, okay, what does cultural relevance look like, and what are we trying to achieve with it, right? Is it about I don't know, working with local influencers and having a social channel in Arabic, which we do, but also what do we hope to achieve by that, right? What sort of change is that meant to produce? And so I think once you know what you're trying to achieve, that sort of determines also what it is that you're measuring. So at a very basic level, for example, when we launch channels and newsletters and content that resonates with a lot of people in the region and leans into cultural concepts here, we definitely see increased engagement rates and better response from our customers. But again, there needs to be a piece where you ultimately tie that back to the business and say, okay, this is having an impact, or, is it just a nice to have? And are we getting it right? Because again, I think in this region, there's so many cultural nuances. There's no such thing as one Middle Eastern culture or one Arabic culture and so on. So I think tuning in to get that granularity right and to understand what it is exactly that resonates with people, also in terms of messaging and offers and products, right? The way we market one hotel in this market might be entirely different to another place, right? So I think it comes down to that granularity of what matters to the customer and what impact does it have ultimately on the brand and the numbers.
I'm going to segue and shift to this, elephant in the room that is AI. A lot of conversations that have happened here over the past 2 hours have primarily been about where we need to go and where we're at and how some of the top marketers in the region are getting there. But there are a lot of us still wetting their feet, so to speak, getting a hands-on experience. And as Sohail and Amy were mentioning, there's a need for that curiosity to build. There's a need to touch, and try and test. But in that process, should we have our expectations muted? And I'm bringing that human aspect and that human touch point here is, how can we ensure that human and AI work coexistently from where we're at right now to ensure that it's not just about delivery, it's not just about speed to market, but also to that point of, ensuring that we are hitting the right business outcomes. We are being creative to the best of our ability with the tools that we have, but we're being culturally relevant while we're doing it.
Well, I'm not as worried about AI as I think a lot of people are. I mean, I come from a tech background, and I think some of the concerns we're now seeing with AI were there with any major technological advancement. People were saying initially, oh, internet is ruining our kids and it's the source of all evil. And then there were phones. And I'm sure my parents were saying the same about TV, by the way. Like, stop watching TV. Now I'm lucky if my kids want to sit in front of a TV and watch something for 2 hours, right? It's such an achievement. So I think there's a certain amount of hesitation and fear that comes with technology naturally. I think the way people use now AI is very human, right?
It's a reflection of who they are.
Yeah, and we get it to do something for us, but if you think about it, there were always people who were plagiarizing things or getting others to do something for them or hiring a ghostwriter, or so I think that's a very human behavior. I think these things will normalize because at some point, everyone's using ChatGPT or Gemini to generate their copy, so how do you stand out? So there will be pressure on all of us to differentiate in a different way, right? Because if AI can now do all these things for everyone, right? It's democratized access to certain types of outputs. Well, you need to be clear on what value you actually bring to the table. So I think with any technology used, there's initial concerns, but these things I think normalize over time. And the other thing that I think is critical in today's world, it's anything around AI or any sort of tech adoption. It's not about tech, it's about organizations and setups. there isn't a shortage of technology, there isn't a shortage of data or information for whatever it is you're trying to solve for. I think what most organizations are struggling with is that there isn't a proper setup in place in terms of team structures and KPIs and capabilities and processes and governance that would enable people to use those tools in the right way. So they're there for everyone to use, right? But it's what your organization does with it.
I want to build on that. It's a very interesting concept of organizational structures. And Rami, I'll come to you on this. We live and work with and speak to diverse audiences within the Middle East. Part of this concept of the human and AI working together is that whether we're doing it from a human level or whether we're doing it as a tool through AI, there's this need to ensure that it is relevant, that it is respectful in the way we do it. But to Eva's point, that cannot happen if you don't have the right team, if you don't have the right nuances. We often say that, okay, we're putting out an Arabic campaign, but if you speak to people within the region, Arabic is a big generalization of a confluence of cultures, a confluence of dialects, a confluence of upbringings, right? So while we still speak the AI piece and the human piece, isn't, as Eva said, isn't it as much as ensuring that within your teams you have sense checks in place and the capabilities to have those sense checks in place with diversity on the team, with inclusion on the team, with ensuring that you have people, Arabic copywriters, English copywriters, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think diversity, we live in a very diverse city, country. And what AI has brought in is the ability to personalize and hyper-personalize and deliver content that will hopefully resonate with that audience, right? But as the brand and as marketeers, we have to ensure the guardrails are in place to bring that respect and to bring that cultural relevance. And that can only happen if you have internal cultural diversity and internal cultural guardrails, right? So like you rightly said, if I'm talking about Arabic creative, Arabic is a huge term. It's a bit like, as somebody from the subcontinent, I'm asked, do I speak Indian? It doesn't exist, right? You have to understand the nuances of all of the different people that we've put into this bucket. And that can only happen if you have people within the organization who are educated and who've been trained to understand that cultural diversity and cultural respect is very important. And like we all discussed, this is something that's built in from the brand. And that needs to come from within the brand, that you do have those ethos as part of your brand equity and your identity. My team in Bayut is unique, I think, because I was telling you this, Anup, I've been there for 7 years. Most of my team's been there for 6+ years, right? So that does not mean that we're not innovating. We're still having new people come in. But I think what that means is with that culture of education and lack of fear, you will be able to reach a level where there is respect, resonance, relevance, right? And that's our responsibility. AI is still an enabler. And I think in this region, still very early days in terms of how we're adopting it, right? It's an efficiency tool more than anything else. And it's our responsibility to build strong cultures within the organization for that future relevancy, because it can be trained and these models can evolve over time. But the onus is still on us to build that cultural relevancy within the teams.
And if I can just add to that, I think the whole point around culture is that teams need to have space and time to learn these things, and most importantly, psychological safety, right? Because we live in times that are incredibly fast-paced. There are so many changes. There's so much novelty and learning. And for the teams to be able to embrace that, they need to know, we can make mistakes. We can experiment. It's okay. Not every project needs to be successful, right? So there needs to be a climate in the organization that allows for that learning. Otherwise, people will just resort to doing the same things over and over again. And then there also needs to be a time commitment, right? We need to be intentional about the things we want to achieve, right? So if we say, oh, it's important for our organization to crack the whole cultural relevance piece, there needs to be time and space, headspace for people to have those conversations. What I think I see too often is that organizations proclaim one thing. They say, oh yeah, we want to focus on this. But then when you look at where people actually spend 90% of their time, it's somewhere else entirely. When you look at the messages that come out of the leadership team, it's something else entirely, right? So as a manager, I'm always mindful, what are the conversations I'm having with my team? Because if every time I go to them, I ask about ROI, campaign performance, well, then the message they're getting this is what she values. This is what the organization values. This is what we should be focusing on. And so if there isn't safety, space, and time to have those futuristic and philosophical conversations, they won't take place.
Before we conclude, I have just one more piece to add to this. Like, we have mentioned outcomes, we had mentioned education within as well. Is this, and I'll ask a question I probably shouldn't be asking on stage, but is this a point where we need to first get our house in order? Is this a point of not just being the voice of the consumer to various internal stakeholders and with the agencies that we work with, but really getting brand on point, understand, like you said, what we stand for, but be watchdogs and safeguards and guardrails within the organizations, not only within our marketing teams, but when we're speaking to sales, when we're speaking to product, when we're speaking to procurement, when we're speaking to finance?
I don't think there's separating consumers from how marketing works, right? Because ultimately marketing is the voice of a consumer, and our job is to make decision making for our consumers easier, right? To take any question marks out of the decision making process. So I think when we do discuss organizational change and when we talk to other teams and stakeholders, we always do that with the consumer lens on. And our reality as marketers nowadays, I think, is incredibly complex because we're managing a lot of internal and external stakeholders and trying to figure out, okay, how do we go about all these people and agencies and resources that we need to work with. But I think ultimately the reason for that is that decision making for the consumer is made easier, because that's ultimately how you make money, right?
An ideal world, but how close are we to that ideal world, Ramya?
I think consumer is always key, right? I agree with Eva on that. I mean, we can never, there's a North Star and that's always the North Star, right? I think what is interesting is I think brand is back a little bit. We've had a few years when that conversation was shifting away from brand, I think, and we've all seen those LinkedIn posts about CMO and CFO conversations, right? But I think brand is back now, and the house always needs to be on the same page, right? Only then are you giving the right message to your consumer. So yes, they're also your internal ambassadors, right? Your sales team, and we don't give them enough credit. They're the people who actually go and speak to consumer. So they need to act as your as representatives of the brand as well. I don't think we're very far from, fixing the houses if there is any requirement for that, because that's part of the job. That has to happen. But consumer is always the North Star, and I think we can't stray from that.
Okay.
And also fixing the house, I don't think is a one-off job.
Yes.
I think
constant.
It's a constant change. I mean, I've seen organizations go through that change constantly and adapt things. And again, it's very important to embrace that mentality where we don't see it as a failure. Okay, we've tried it this way, but it could be better. It could be different, right? So that job is never done.
We'll conclude in a sentence or two. What's the course correction that the market needs at the moment? Tough one. Take your time.
Because it's in a sentence or two. Right? That's what makes it hard.
I think that's the hard part. But I think everybody's discussed this, right? We do need to stay very aligned on strategy, what brand really means, internally, externally. Data, AI, all of these are levers, but without a very clear vision and strategy, the way you use these levers may not be the most impactful. So that clear North Star, clear brand vision, strategy, etc., is hugely important. And we need to stop looking over our shoulder all the time, because change is good. So don't be afraid of the change, but be clear about what your goal is.
Yeah, I agree. Not losing sight of who you are is as a brand is critical, and I'd say just having that flexibility and space as an organization to experiment, to learn, to celebrate failure, to discuss failure. Right? I think too many organizations are very focused on patting themselves on the back and talking about projects we've done incredibly well. I think we need more time talking about things we didn't do well and reasons behind it. And I think as long as we have that open-mindedness and hire people who are curious, people who are who embrace critical thinking. I think critical thinking probably the single most important skill in today's world. I think that will get us through to wherever we need to be.
I think both of you have made the point for anyone who wants to work at Hilton or Bayut. Clearly, they've got their house in order. That's a fantastic way to wrap up this discussion and this event. Thank you so much to our partners, SRMG, Bloomberg Media, and Platformance for joining us here today. A round of applause to Ramya and Eva as well. Thank you all for joining us today.